Well, call me a dummy, but I don't know how evil works. What can you tell me about this? I'd love to know.
Don't worry, Walter. I think evil makes dummies of us all. It's not something that really can be understood. It's beyond human reason. Trying to give it an easy answer, trying to give it any answer, no matter how complicated, does a certain kind of damage to the evil that is evil. So it's beyond us in that sense, and we can't give answers to it, not if we're going to do true justice to the true nature of evil. And the other part of the dumminess of it is that it manipulates us all as well. I mean, if Paul can say of God's good law, the perfect law that was intended to bring life, if sin, evil, can even take that and cause it to bring death, there's something frightening about that kind of power. We are being manipulated all the time by the presence of evil in our lives and in our world and in our cosmos that is beyond our comprehension, beyond our understanding, happening at levels that we cannot perceive. So firstly, let's start off with one of the earlier ideas of how to perceive evil and where does it get placed in the order of creation. One of the brilliant minds in Christendom, a guy called Augustine, lived many years ago. He talked about evil as non-being. So imagine it in the way that Einstein spoke of it. Don't think of darkness as being a thing. Think of it as the absence of light. Don't think of cold being a thing, but think of cold being the absence of warmth. So therefore, think of evil in similar ways. It's not actually a thing, it's the absence of something. And there's a really important reason why we would talk about evil in those terms. The risk, if we don't, is that we give evil a place in creation, as if to say that it is a force in creation that God created. It is a thing that God has built into his good creation when he made the world. What Augustine's trying to do here, and what he has achieved, is to say evil has no place in creation. The problem with it, though, is that it kind of became an alternative to God. It became God's evil twin. If you've seen the yin and yang symbol of the light and dark entwined together in a circle, as if that light and darkness are necessary to each other to balance each other out. As if to say that, for instance, in order to have a holy God, you need to have an unholiness, an unholy devil. And they become locked in a titanic and eternal struggle that will never end because they need one another. So what we came to then was this idea of limited non-being. So still working with Augustine's idea, but taken away from it the idea that in a sense that God was balanced out by evil, or that evil had any kind of role or place in creation. And that we only understood what good was because we had an evil to compare it to. So limited non-being, here's the Swiss cheese analogy. Not my one, but certainly I think it's helpful. Notice the holes in the Swiss cheese. Those holes only exist because there is cheese. If there is no cheese, if I eat this cheese, where are the holes? They are nowhere. I have not found the holes and placed them in a separate container. The cheese does not need the holes to be cheese. There are other cheeses that do not have holes, and they are still cheese. They are no way lesser to this cheese. The holes, however, absolutely need the cheese to exist. So think then of evil in this same way, that in limited non-being we are saying that goodness, the cheese, will always be goodness, whether there are holes in it or not. But the holes themselves only exist in the presence of goodness. And when they are gone, it is gone, and there is no place for it and no need for it. So when we imagine the future realm, the realm that when Christ returns, we believe he will hand to us as our final inheritance, and that will be one without evil, and in which we will not miss it in the same way that we would not miss having no holes in cheese if we never knew that some cheese had holes. So without undoing at all any of what I've just said about creation not needing evil at all, we do need to accept that evil is more than just holes in cheese. It is more than just the absence of something. It feels like the presence of something too, that there seems to be something lurking as a will in that hole, in that lack of God. There seems to be something filling that lack, and Scripture calls it the devil, Satan, the accuser. Speaks of a demonic realm, speaks of even the death as being a realm holding many prisoner, and sin in the same way speaks of is being spoken of as if it has a will and an intent and a power. There is an ever-present darkness that is not simply passive as if holes in cheese. There is something about this darkness, this hole in God's good creation, that has a will to destroy. There's a temptation, if we're thinking about only evil as a hole in cheese kind of thing, or even as a force in the world needing to be resisted, that we might imagine ourselves as being able to, just through good works and having the right intent and believing the right things and doing the right things, that we'd cast out this evil. We would, as it were, fill those holes in the cheese with more cheese, and it would be over. We could do this. Kind of a self-help, I suppose. Now that I've seen the problem, I can see the solution type of approach, which is, secularism and humanism. Really, they are children of Christianity for reasons I won't go into here, but you can kind of see perhaps echoes of them. We can see that there is a problem. We can see there is a darkness in the world, and the solution that humanism and secularism has come to is, well, we just need to throw more money in it. The problem of, what was it just recently on the news? They were talking about what is the major problem being confronted? Oh, it had to do with the hate crimes toward Asian people in America at the moment. And the news presenter said to the reporter on the ground, what is the solution to the problem? And she said, well, the solution's obvious. It's money. We need more and more money to educate so that people don't commit hate crimes, because hate crimes and evil, by the way, are a lack of education. We need more money so that we can protect people with more policing, and it just went on and on and on. And I thought, that's it. That's exactly what we think. That's exactly what we're left thinking when we think of evil as just the absence of a good thing. We just need to fill those absences with good things, even if it is the good thing of having a robust and effective police force, or that would be the plaster over the problem while we do the bigger fixing up of the problem, which is getting to the children before they become committers of hate crime, and we'll educate them so that once we're all educated and rational and civil, we won't do these things anymore. Well, there's a story that I saw recently that I had been reflecting on even as I saw this news story just last night. And it's an old story. It's an Agatha Christie story, actually, a writer of detective stories, whodunit stories. And she had this famous character, the most brilliant detective, Hercule Poirot, a Belgian. He kind of epitomizes this very enlightenment dream, and we still hang on to this dream even now, as we heard just in that news article, that through reason and logic and education and through balancing justice by using right to balance out wrongs, and using our justice system to sort out the problems, we will come into a new nirvana of human civilization through our own reason and abilities and economic resources and whatever it might be. And the story that was first a book and was now adapted to movie was called Murder on the Orient Express, and it's one of her more famous books. And this is definitely going to spoil it for you, so if you don't want to know, then you can log off now. But to cut it really short, a man is murdered on the train, of course, and Hercule Poirot is called in to investigate. He's on the train, and in the course of his investigation, he discovers that this murdered man, stabbed many, many times, was himself a murderer. And he connects him to a story he had heard a year or so ago of an American family called the Armstrong family. Now, their young child had been kidnapped, and they paid the ransom, but the ransom wasn't enough, or at least the man who had kidnapped the child murdered the child anyway in taking the ransom. And this rippled out as even greater effects. The mother at the time was pregnant with their second child. She went into shock labor, and in doing so lost the child and her own life. And the father, looking on, seeing his family destroyed, took his own life as well. The man on the train was the kidnapper, murderer, ransom taker. He had set himself up in Europe under a new name as a businessman. As Poirot goes about the investigation, he discovers that there are only two people on the train not connected to the story of the Armstrongs, and that is himself and his friend. Everyone else, though, has a connection. They had all collaborated, been drawn together for the one purpose, which is to seek their vengeance, their justice, their own balancing of the scales by killing this man. So Poirot is faced with an enormous moral dilemma. He believes utterly in this idea of, by doing the right thing, by bringing justice through the justice system, you can right the wrongs, solve the problems of humanity, draw us out of the darkness and the animal history and into this new light of human reason. And yet he finds himself with this conundrum. Here is a whole group of people who, through this one evil deed, are now tainted with the same evil. They have become, because of this man's evil murder, they have become murderers themselves. And if he is to hand them over to the justice system, as he should, does he achieve justice in this situation? He makes 12 other people who were before innocent, now murderers. He is going to add on to them a murder sentence, and their life will be lived for the rest of their lives, or at least for a good chunk of it, in jail. Is that justice? Having killed a man who probably deserved it. And he is torn. He is torn. So what does he do? Well, ultimately he does the only thing probably he could have done, and that is, he tells a lie. He becomes one of the crew. He becomes the 13th member of their cabal. He tells the law enforcement officers at the end of the train journey that this man had many enemies. One of those enemies hired an assassin. The assassin killed him and then ran away. He had to create a devil. He had to create some other evil in order to cover for the crime of these 12 people, which was a crime of passion and compassion, a crime of complicitness, but also a crime understandable within the context. And what we see in the story, and what we see over and over and over and over replayed, is a total misunderstanding of the power and the reality of evil. It is not simply a matter of right and wrong. It is not simply a matter of, if we do enough right, we will fix the problems. Because the evil has this, just as it is able to take God's good law and turn it into death, so too was Poirot in that same predicament, realizing the justice system and the good law that prevented or made criminal the act of murder, that in applying that in this situation, it would not have been a just outcome. Therefore, he too becomes tainted with the same evil, complicit in this man's murder. The murder of a murderer, for sure. But that one man's murder, an evil act, ripples out, and its fingers, its sticky, tarry, yucky fingers touch everyone and everything. Because he knows as well that even if he did send them to jail, he would not walk free of that moment either. He would feel like he had defended the murderer, the child murderer, and would have been complicit with his evil deed. That is the problem of evil. It touches everything and leaves us all stained. That is why evil is not a problem with an easy answer. The only answer we have is the answer or the solution that we see in the death of Christ on the cross. It is too profound a thought to delve into now. I'm overdue time. But that's worth thinking about. There's only one solution really to the thing that human reason and logic simply can't solve. The problem of evil is beyond us, literally beyond us. and has only been addressed through the life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And those are my thoughts for this year's Lent and this year's Easter. Pray that you are safe this weekend and take care of your loved ones and take care of your neighbour. God bless you. See you soon.